What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, talking today about IGN and sort of wondering about when exactly did they get so bad. What I'm talking about specifically is over the course of the last year, they have actually had to delete multiple reviews, redacting them, retracting them, or sometimes just doing heavy edits and pretending that nobody would notice. And it's starting to set a very peculiar trend. I know there's a running joke online right now that IGN has always been the worst gaming media, but that's not actually the case. If you rewind the clock back to the age of actual physical gaming magazines, IGN was the freaking trendsetters. Everything they did was such a big deal. They were willing to do stuff that nobody else was. They were some of the first people to try and create a fully online medium. They were one of the first places that really decided to try and have video-based content where you'd have a reviewer actually sit down on camera and talk to you about what they liked or disliked about a particular game. Since that time, though, there's definitely been some very rocky shakeups. It just seems like they're not able to keep themselves as rooted and grounded as they once were. And now, over the course of the last year, seeing their massive mistakes start to pile up, it's making it where it's very difficult to trust them. Now, I just want to say, I think that there is a difference between a bad review and an incorrect review. You see, you can disagree with a review. I mean, there's actually been a lot of times where I've reviewed a game because it was something that I ended up hating. You guys have been really angry at me, but we could also have an understanding where you're like, okay, DreamcastGuy just did not like this, and I can disagree with that. He's dumb, he's uneducated in this particular area, and so because of it, I can just understand that it is his point of view. Separately though, there are reviews that are wrong, where they're actually stating information that is not in the game whatsoever. This has now happened several times. There's of course famous examples like IGN claiming that a Pokemon game had too much water. There's times like when they completely ripped apart Doom 2016, well, that game's a masterpiece. They acted like it sucked. There's times like Prey. They acted like that game was a broken, unplayable mess when, newsflash, that's not true. These errors, typically in the past, were very small occurrences, things that would just pop up every couple of years. They were kind of a joke, and then after the memes dried up, everybody moved on. But now, IGN is having these things happen more and more often, back to back. Let's just begin with the most recent one, which is the Resident Evil 2 remake. Now, I am currently working on my own big video on this, and I'm excited to tell you about it. It's awesome. But their review was strange because at this point I'd already beaten the game and I started reading their review, and it actually had something that was very, very obviously wrong, which is that it stated in the original review that playing as the different characters didn't change much, that if you played as Leon and then Claire, there was just basically the same game twice. This is not true. In actuality, there is a second scenario and a first scenario where you're sort of following the same path, but there will be enemies in different spots, extra characters you encounter, and different ways to try and handle situations. It is very much an A and B game, the same way that it was back on the PlayStation 1 and the Dreamcast. It's sort of a reinvention of it, but this reviewer clearly did not play that. Just by looking at the wording of it, you can tell that he probably finished one of the people's campaigns, started trying the other, and just flat out quit, despite the fact that that shows that he clearly did not see everything in it. If you want the full Resident Evil experience, you need to beat the game 4 times. Now, I'm not going to explain why, but I think that every reviewer should do that. It's what I'm trying to do, and it's why my video isn't completed yet. And that's not even counting the extra modes. But this stuff, it happens. We make mistakes. But the weird thing here is that they just basically posted this weird screenshot of crossed out lettering. They just basically went oopsie doodle, and then after they had their oopsie, they just bumped up the score 0.2 points. They didn't really acknowledge that something happened. They just kind of dusted off their elbows and walked away. But this thing, that wasn't a one-time occurrence. We saw it just last week as well with the Ace Combat 7 review. Now, even if you're not normally a fan of something like Ace Combat, you have to acknowledge that it has a very large fan base, because nobody else is making fighter jet games like this. It is very, very accurate to just the cool feeling of being in the cockpit and blowing stuff up. But part of the appeal of these games is the crazy, ridiculous anime-style story. But this is something that the reviewer in the IGN article completely crapped all over. And if you actually watch their gameplay very closely, it seems like the reviewer is actually playing it on ultra easy mode. How are you supposed to get a good feeling as to what the developers are trying to create if you're playing it on a mode where you can't even freaking do barrel rolls, or you don't have to worry about trying to lock onto targets in the same way? It's just so obvious that so many times everybody is in a giant rush. This is actually my theory. I think that right now something is going at IGN, which is that they're just in a massive hurry to get those clicks. I think that they're having money problems, and they're trying to do their best to just get every piece of content out, no matter how screwed up it can be. Just a month ago, we actually saw another case of something like this that really sort of gave me this idea originally, which is when they decided to review the giant Borderlands 2 VR. This was going to be a very different game, so they decided to hire a freelance VR reviewer, somebody who would beat it on his own time, write the big article, and get it published on the website. And it turned out that a large chunk of his information was flat out incorrect. He made a lot of complaints in his review about it having too many freaking times where the controls were jittery or it wasn't that smooth, and this is all stuff that is very, very apparent in the options menu, meaning that this guy played it a little bit, wrote his big fancy article, gave it a horrible score, and then forgot about it. And you know what? If IGN wasn't in such a hurry to try and throw all these articles up, they'd be able to fact check. I think that everybody, especially if you're IGN, you're one of the biggest freaking websites in the world, you're on Metacritic, you should have 2 people on each project. Just make it where everybody has somebody to double check them, at least a little bit. I know that way back in the day there was this website called Revision 3 Games, and that was actually something they did, which is where the reviewer would beat 100% of the game, and then a second person would beat about 20% of the game, just so that they could check their math, so to speak. They would look at their data and go, okay, I agree with this combat style, but you accidentally missed this thing about the upgrade tree. It was just something to make sure that everybody was being as accurate as possible. By far, though, the biggest example of how IGN is in just too much of a hurry for their own good is obviously the Dead Cells fiasco. Now, I don't want to go into too much of it, but obviously what happened was there was a gentleman who was working at IGN and was stealing every single piece of content he put up. Blatant plagiarism, sometimes lifting entire freaking videos. Just literally watching somebody else's content, transcribing it, reading it, and posting it on the official IGN website as if he had created it. This is something that should have been very, very clear. Theft on that magnitude should be very easy to spot and be transparent, simply because if somebody's talking about their thoughts and feelings on a game and it seems like it's a little bit stylistically different from their other work, you should have that red flag. You should have a boss who's checking your work. Now, I do agree with some of the people that say that it's impossible to check every single review from every single direction. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that if you are that big, if you are a freaking website that gets hundreds of millions of clicks every single month, you need to hold yourself to the highest standard. I'm somebody who reads a lot of history books, specifically video game history books. And something that I think is very interesting about these elder eras is the times of how much people just kind of checked things and checked things and checked things. Nintendo did not make a move until they knew they had to. Sony, Microsoft, these people only made moves in the industry when they knew it would be a good choice, because they were constantly trying to check themselves. IGN and some other gaming websites, they don't care anymore. They're just trying to throw stuff out there, and if it's bad, they'll apologize later. This is a dangerous method that I very honestly believe is going to end up causing the crash of IGN. It seems like it's on the horizon as they get ever more desperate. But what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and what is a review they've posted that just seemed to baffle you with how badly it really went? Thanks so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do it the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Oh man, I'm going to probably get a little bit roasted for this video, so let me just enjoy some watermelon juice and try and calm down. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.